in the zone to be. From a yin to my yang to my yang to Z. Put a grin on my chin when you come to me. Cause I'm weird, I'm a one of a kind, and I'll bring death to the place you're about to be. Another river of blood running under my feet. Forged in a fire lit long ago. Stand next to me, you'll never stand alone. I'm last to leave, but the first to go. Lord, make me dead before you make me old. I feed on the fear of the devil inside of the enemy faces in my sight. Aim with a hand, shoot with a mind, kill with a heart like Arctic ice.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a warrior, this is my song.
I am a warrior and this is my song. I'm bask in the glow of the rising war. Lay waste to the ground of an enemy shore.
I read you, Lima Charlie, loud and clear.
Welcome to Lima Charlie, episode 16 with Tyler Nelson. Welcome, Tyler.
I appreciate it, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So let's start off with who you are and kind of why we have you here on the show.
Yeah, Tyler Nelson. Joined the Army in 2006. Part of the delayed entry program with the college loan repayment program. I was in college at the time, always growing up. I mean, junior, senior year of high school, I remember sneaking around my neighborhood, which I grew up a couple blocks from Lake Michigan. And so there, some multi-million-dollar houses on the lake. And me and my best friend growing up, we always thought it was fun to like sneak around and not get caught by the security and stuff like that. And we'd play Army, I guess you could say, right? And then, I was in college. Weirdly enough, I was a studio art major because, when you're a studio art major, your first thought in walking into the recruiter's office after your freshman year of college, realizing you're not really going to do much with that,
Right.
with that degree. You walk in and you say, I want to jump out of planes and shoot bad people. So it's very, very different mindset from where I was in college, but something I always, in my mind, always kind of wanted to do. And I guess finally grew enough balls to walk into the recruiter's office, and he was like, hey, you're in college, right? It's like, yeah. And he's like, don't sign this yet. Sign this one, and you can go to school for another 3 years, and we'll repay all your student loans. And I was like, what? Like, this is awesome. So my experience with a recruiter is not like most people's. He actually didn't lie to me. He could have gotten me to sign up and gone to basic training and active duty right then and there, but he was like, hey, dude, I'm going to help you out. So very rare experience, I know, for most people with recruiters, but was very happy with that. Albeit it took the Army 12 years to repay those student loans compared to the 3 that they were supposed to, but it was eventually repaid.
Was that to come in as an officer, or was that?
No, so the idea was that you got a certain amount of credits during those 3 years, and then you come in as an E4.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, you mean I'm going to make more money starting off? Like, sign me up. This sounds like a great idea.
Right.
But I lasted about 3 semesters after that before I joined. So, and I could say I probably have like a semester and a half's worth of credits from that time period. Cause in the back of my mind, I knew I was where I was supposed to be. I was just kind of delaying it. Right. And I was playing soccer at the time. I grew up playing really competitive soccer. And so I was like, I want to play some soccer in college. It's just like my thing. And yeah. And so, joined the Army. Was like, had a funny story. I had a RIP contract, option 40 contract, because I played soccer, so I was in really good shape. They're like, yeah, this dude's gonna make it. He'll be fine. We'll give him one. And my mom, for whatever reason, I had astigmatism and I was nearsighted. So my mom was like deathly afraid that I was gonna go to combat and my glasses were gonna fog up and I was gonna get shot and killed. So she's like, and I was just about to turn 21. And so she's like, you're going to get LASIK. I'm paying for it. You're not wearing glasses. I was like, all right, sweet. Awesome. This sounds good. So I go and get LASIK, and then I go to MEPS like 2 weeks later. My eyes aren't even fully healed yet. And so they're like doing the eye exam. They're like, did you have eye surgery? I was like, no. Because the recruiter's like, don't tell them. I was like, no. And they were like, are you sure? Like, because it looks like you just had LASIK. And I was like, maybe. And they're like, yeah, you're not going anywhere. Like, when did it happen? Like, it looks fresh. And I was like, oh, like 2 weeks ago. They're like, yeah, you're not going anywhere. So I got delayed like I'll say like a month and a half or something like that. And then I finally went back through and they were like, no option 40 contract for you. You lost that. Here's your airborne contract. That's all you're going to get. 11 X-ray. And yes. And they were like, well, don't worry. Once you get to airborne school, you can always volunteer to go to regiment. And I was like, okay, so I can still end up there. Not a big deal. And then basic training, they were like, you got orders to Italy. I was like, I'm not going to regiment now. Like, I'm not going to pass up this opportunity, to be a part of 173rd. And, you hear about the historic, the history of the 173rd and everything. And you're like, this is like the dream place to go. And so I didn't say no to it. And sure enough, showed up in Vicenza with the 2nd Battalion of the 503rd. And shortly after, got sent on my first deployment, which became pretty historic after that.
Yeah. So you never had any thoughts of joining the Marine Corps or the Air Force or anything like that? The Army was your first choice?
The Army was my first choice, 100%.
Airborne
Mostly,
all the way?
yeah, like to jump out of planes. And that was the fastest way to get to airborne. My real goal was to try and get to free fall, which after getting out, I've done a ton of skydive since as a civilian. But my goal was to do that. Like that was the carrot they could dangle in front of me to keep me moving, was like, we'll get you to free fall. And I was like, all right, what do I got to do? Where do I sign? Like, let's do this. So, yeah, that was really my goal. And so I knew airborne had to be in there first. And, I knew infantry was probably the fastest way to get there.
Yeah. So the military is very good about dangling that carrot, whether it's the next promotion, whether it's the next duty assignment, whether it's the next school. They're very good at that. And they're also very good about not delivering it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then as soon as you're about to grab that carrot, it disappears. And you're like, what happened?
So you go to Benning and your first duty assignment is Italy.
Yep.
Wow. That's great. I mean, a lot of guys, they're going to go to Fort Hood. They're going to go to Fort Lewis. They're going to go to Fort Bragg. All the big infantry bases.
Yeah. Right? Oh, I had it in my mind I was going to Bragg. Like, I was going to get orders to Bragg. And when I got those orders, when I showed up to airborne school and regiment shows up to pick up the guys with their option 40 contracts, and they ask who wants to volunteer to go, like, in my mind, that's where I was going. Like, I wasn't going to go to Bragg. I was going to go to RIP and just go that route. And the moment they were like, they're calling out orders and they're like, Nelson, 173rd. I was like, that's Italy. I'm not going to RIP now. I'm not passing this opportunity up. Like, that's once in a lifetime. Like, and to get it straight out of basic, I know guys spend their whole career and never get that order.
So how long were you in Italy? How long were you stationed there?
I think it was 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was April, August, September. I showed up 2006, and then I left January 2009. So 2.5 years. But I mean, it was a nice.
Where you were at, that's an airborne unit, right? Like you said. So you were jumping there. You maintained your jump status the whole time. So that's a dream there. I mean, you're in a beautiful country.
The amount you jump there is minimal at best. I mean, they sign all kinds of waivers to get rid of the minimum requirement because it's not easy to jump there.
Yeah. What makes it so difficult to jump there?
I think it's just to organize it with the government and the resources. And, at the time, to get planes just to do that in Europe was pretty rare. Most of those planes were dedicated somewhere else. So I think just the logistics of it, and then organizing it through the governments was always a pain, and getting the resources we needed from the Italians. I did eventually get my Italian jump wings post deployment, which was nice, but usually you just have to have like the Italian on the plane and then you're blessed off and you get them. Sure. I was fortunate enough to have them JMPI me and push me out the door. So about as real as you can get with it. That was definitely a little frightening when he's JMPI me. I'm like, looking around like,
is he familiar with this?
Like, is this legit? Like, is there going to be an American JMPI me after this? Like, are we, nope, like, you're good to go, buddy. I was like, well, okay.
Nice.
So it's an amazing first duty station because, especially being in 2nd Battalion there, at the time we had Colonel Osland, and Sergeant Major Myers, and they kind of set the tone. I mean, everyone knows, or most people are aware of, the OEF-8 deployment in Afghanistan with us, because there's 2 very big documentaries that were made about it, with Korngal and Restrepo being the first one. And obviously the book War, written by Sebastian Junger. That deployment, their leadership set the tone for that deployment for us, and our ability to carry out the deployment in the manner in which we did, and the amazing things that don't get told about that deployment. A lot of people see Korngal and then they hear about Wanat, and it looks pretty terrible. But the fact of the matter is we were actually successfully pushing back the Taliban and disrupting everything that they were doing in that area, which, obviously is quite famous for Marcus Luttrell and Lone Survivor, and what happened to the SEALs there is in that AO. And we were
Right there.
kind of sticking it to them at,
So
towards the
let's
end.
back up a little bit on that. So your first duty station is Vicenza, right? Your infantry. You know what you signed up for, right? How long were you in Italy before you got called up to go to Iraq?
I think it was almost a year. So no,
Okay.
September we deployed, I think May. So
Okay.
September to May. And then 3 months of that was spent in Germany training. We
Okay.
did 2 Grafenwehr rotations that were 30 days long each. And then we did a Hohenfels JRTC for 30 days. So really, I mean, it was like the small amount of time we got in Italy leading up to it. And even afterwards, it was every weekend was a 3 or 4 day weekend. Go take a mileage pass. If you're not, squad leaders knocking on the door on the weekends, like, come on, let's get out of the barracks room. Let's go do something.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, you're doing a lot of training, a lot of tempo, because they knew you were going, right?
yeah, when we would go to Germany and train, it was you wouldn't just do the lane or the stick or whatever you were doing for that day to the standard. No, it was done until we basically couldn't get it wrong. Like, okay, great, you met the standard. Dogs. So we would meet the standard, and then after that, it was do it again and again and again and again. And I mean, that's all we did for 30 days. I mean, we didn't sleep much. I mean, it was basically like a mini deployment at that point. They were going to push us real hard, and they had to, because they knew what was coming.
Right. So you're going into this deployment. You get word you're going, right? What's your mindset at this point? What are you thinking?
No
Let's
clue.
go.
I'm going to the unknown. You're
go.
hearing the stories of these guys, right? And they're talking about like the previous deployment to Afghanistan, and they're like, "Oh yeah, a good buddy of mine." And they're talking about Al, and they're like, "Yeah, he ran some guys over on a motorcycle and had like 3 confirmed kills because of it." And that was like the one instance that anybody had of anything like crazy cool, or Doc Lemon, or Sergeant Lorman. Like, you hear about these like stories. They're like one-offs, right? They're very rare. And then we went on that deployment. I just remember about a month in, looking over to I was in a heavy weapons company in Destin company, and remember looking over at my section sergeant being like, "Are all deployments like this?" And he just goes, "No, this is not normal." And I was like, "Okay," because this doesn't seem like everything you guys had told me before, like the one-off stories of like a crazy firefight. I'm like, we've got a dozen of them and we're a month in. Like, this seems different. And but yeah, so I mean, going into it, I mean, we didn't really know. You'd hear the stories, and I think God, I don't even know what he is now. I think it's General Kearney now, maybe, but it was Captain Kearney at the time. And then when he was at regiment, I knew him as major, and I knew he got promoted to lieutenant colonel, but I don't know where he's at now. But he said it best in Restrepo when he talks about it in the beginning. It's like, you hear the stories like 10th Mountain was getting shot at every single day. And you're like, what? No way. Because you hear the stories from the other guys that were just there, about a year prior, and they weren't experiencing that. So you're like, something's off. Like, I think some people are just embellishing this. Like, it's not real. It's not going to be that bad. They weren't lying. It's like you knew in the back of your mind it was going to be bad, but you didn't really fully know how bad it was going to be, because you get conflicting stories.
So of this unit that deploys, I'm assuming it's a mixture of some who had already been before and a lot of first timers for like yourself.
Yeah,
What was the
a good
mixture?
mix. I mean, we even had some guys that jumped into Iraq with the 173rd.
Okay. Got the mustard stain.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and some funny stories there. Like the one guy, he was telling me the story. Oaks, everyone calls him Dirty Oaks. Anybody that was in Second Battalion at that time knows Oaks, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I brought like a couple logs of Copenhagen because they were like, we're gonna be there. You're gonna be there 30 days. You're gonna jump in. It's 30 days. You're gonna be out. Well, it was 9 months.
Oh wow.
So for like the first like 6 months, he was the only one that had dip because they couldn't get it or something like that. It was like first 3 months, there's 90 days or something like that. So just hearing stories like that from some of those guys, you're like, oh man, it's crazy. And so we had a good mix of guys, several, I mean, higher leadership. I'd say, I want to say E7 and above, the majority of them had been around since they were in Iraq in 2003. And then so there was some guys been around for a little while and been in that unit. Whatever drug deal they worked to stay there that long, congratulations to them. But we didn't have a ton from somewhere else. But I will say, whatever Colonel Preisler, Colonel Oslin worked up, that every platoon sergeant above was tabbed.
Nice.
Every platoon sergeant PL and above was tabbed. That was on the line. So
Nice.
that'll give you an idea of the mindset. I don't know how they work that, but that'll show you like the level of leadership that we had and why they were able to push us so hard, why things worked out so well when they did work out well. Now, obviously, we know of the things that didn't work out well. But the fact of the matter is, and something I try and get to people to realize is those events that occurred, like Wenat, and that was like, could have happened to anybody any day for 15 months. And we all knew it. We all went into it. Like once we got there and we got an idea of what was going on, and you're talking 11 dudes on a fire base that's an hour and a half drive from the closest fob.
Right.
I mean, you just knew like there's a very good chance 100 dudes could come over this hill tomorrow morning and we're outnumbered, and let's hope for the best. But you kind of welcomed it in a weird way. You were like, let's go. Like, let's see this Mongolian horde, like bring it on. And it was great because you had great leaders that would motivate you to, like, if that were to occur, no one was super freaked out by it. And obviously you'd have your onesies and twosies where they were eventually, I think the amount of combat eventually got to some of them, but for the majority, they had found ways to keep us engaged, to keep us motivated, to keep us like, yeah, all right, another firefight. Let's bring it on. Let's do it. Like, let's go. And you get pumped up for it, which.
So you guys, you get your orders and you're going into country. Who were you relieving? Who was coming out? Was it 10th Mountain? Okay.
Yeah. I felt bad for him because some of the stories we heard, like these dudes were literally on the way out of the country and they got turned around.
Oh, wow.
And got extended like 90 days. And then they got shoved in the Korengal. They got shoved in Chowkay. They got shoved in Narang. They got shoved in Wadapur. I don't think anybody was in Wadapur, but in the Pesh Valley, Camp Blessing, like they got shoved there. And I mean, like, imagine being like, yeah, babe, I'm on my way home. Can't wait to see you in like a month, whatever, however long it takes to get out of country to, yeah, I'm going to see you in like 120 days.
Right. Yeah. So you get into country. What's your first mission out of the gate? I mean, are you, be seen? Are you going for high value targets? What's your initial push? You land in country and you're hitting the ground.
I mean, we got to Bagram. It was like 2 weeks of classes. Like you need to, like we need to introduce you to Afghanistan, what's going on, what's going over here, what's current, SOPs and the way things are working, which all of us were jet lagged and everyone's falling asleep through the PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint on jet lag.
Rules of engagement because
all that. And you're just like,
can
I just go? Can we just get to the fob already? Like, it sucks. But really we were like waiting for flights and stuff like that because you had to take a Chinook out there. Finally, we get our day. We show up to the fob. I want to say we spent 2 or 3 days just getting acclimated to the fob. And then we replaced Chosen Company had a platoon with us. And then we Destined Company, we had 2 platoons. So we went and replaced 2 of the squads. I think Chosen Company split their platoon into 2 squads. So we went and replaced one half out in Chowkay. And the morning we're going to go right up there. They got rocketed out there. So they like shotgunned us. Like we were supposed to like leave like that afternoon or something like that. But they're like, no, you're leaving now. Like they just got rocketed. You got to go. And so driving up there, you're like, all right, like here we go. Like we're going to show up like guns ablazing and it's going to be wild. And, show up and dudes are just standing around and rocket landed like 150 meters from the fire base or something like that. And it was just like 1 or 2 rockets. You're like, oh, that was very anticlimactic showing up here. So we go out there and those guys left. We had, we did the left seat, right at that point. And we had one of I think it was the 10th Mountains platoon sergeant or something like that. This guy may have been former SF or something, but I just like, it's burnt in the back of my mind, like seeing this guy. And that was like the first clue. Like it really was as bad as we were hearing. Dude's hair was long. Looked like he had like I don't know, 12 o'clock shadow, like a midnight shadow, not a 5 o'clock. Like he hadn't shaved in like 3 days. Boots untied, not wearing a blouse, just t-shirt. Like dude looked like a bum pretty much in like ACUs. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, what is this? And then I was like, okay, if that dude's looking like that and he's looking pretty rough, this might not be a good sign. This might not be good. And then
so you said you're doing left seat, right seat. What are you, up armored Humvees? What are you in?
Yeah, just up armored Humvees,
okay.
Varying different degrees of up armor depending on the truck. And so we get to the fire base, and the other half of the Chosen platoon leaves, and like, all right, we're gonna go on a patrol. We're just gonna take an easy patrol. There's like this little hilltop right over here. It's called Gatorback. We're just gonna walk up there and just go for a quick patrol, kind of show our presence. We're gonna be walking around, we're gonna be doing stuff. And first patrol, we make it. I mean, you're talking like I want to say maybe 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers straight line.
Not very far at all.
Not very far at all.
Yeah.
Oh, it took us a long time because none of us were ready for it. Like nobody was ready for that terrain. Like you don't realize how bad that terrain is until you get there, and all the shell rock, and every step you take, you're damn near sliding down the mountain. I'm not a little guy by any stretch of the imagination. So leading up to the deployment, like I took pride in how much weight I could carry during our ruck marches and stuff like that. And I was in the dismount squad, so I volunteered to carry the saw. I legit like asked my squad, like, can I carry the saw? And he's like, you got to go ask platoon sergeant. And I was like, okay. So I go up to the platoon sergeant. I'm like, Sergeant Rob, can I carry the saw when we get to Afghanistan? He's like, well, you're going to get it anyways, but I'm glad you're volunteering. I was like, oh, okay. Well, this makes it easy. I was so stoked. I remember I was just like so happy about that. Wasn't so happy about it, 2/3 into the deployment, volunteering for that. But at the time, I'm carrying that, I'm carrying up the mountain. I'm like, man, this really sucks. Like, this is some bullshit. And Oaks, the guy I was telling you about before, he ended up getting a little hefty, after a couple of deployments and getting kind of comfortable. Lifelong E4 kind of guy. He started going down as a heat casualty. I mean, first patrol. And our platoon sergeant was like, are you serious right now? You can't make it up this fucking hill? He goes, Oaks, if you're telling me you're a heat casualty and you can't make it any further, you're getting an IV in the ass. And he's like, I can't make it any further. I go to our doc. They're like, Doc, he needs an IV in the ass. Like, that's where he's getting it. So first patrol in Afghanistan, this dude that jumped into Iraq is bent over, pants down, getting flushed. I mean, it was hilarious. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. This is it. Like, this is a deployment. This is coming. Okay. This is going to be a good time. Like, it's going to be hilarious. But yeah, that was my first patrol was seeing that. I mean, nothing happened. They didn't engage us. They did their normal. They're going to see how we operate. We're a new unit. Let's see these guys. Let's see what they do. They're going to observe us, figure out what our SOPs are and how they can exploit our weaknesses. And, Yeah, it was pretty funny the first time.
Yeah, we've talked on the show before with other guests about um, how the responses changed, right, and how the tactics evolve on both sides during the entire thing, right?
Yeah.
So initially, it's just very primitive IEDs to now we're doing a little bit more advanced now, remote detonation, remote. What was it like when you first got there? What was kind of their tactics? Were they, for example, one of them I talked to, um, it was a striker unit, and they would place IEDs just strong enough to get you to disable and dismount, and then they would attack,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
What was the tactic when you were there?
They um don't have proof, but we have good intel. Because eventually the intel came out that this is like I want to say a few weeks later after this occurred. So you're talking about a month and a half in. We got credible intel that there was Chechens operating within our valley, and potentially had been there for a while. So like I mentioned, that we're driving up there and they're like, hey, they just got rocketed. We got to get up there now, hop in the truck and go. They were slowly walking in 107s to the fire base, and they were launching them from about 4.5 clicks out. And it was a very slow tactic. So they knew that they were getting replaced. And so they knew we didn't know the lay of the land very well. And so they picked this spot far off in a far ridge line where it was very well wooded, big, tall pines or whatever they were there. So, if they launched 1 or 2 107s, it would eat the smoke from the launch. So we couldn't pick up the signature from the launch. And so they would launch 1 or 2, adjust, and wait days or a week or more. And yeah, that was their tactic. They wanted to see how we responded to it, because we were MTO'd, and we were given tow missiles because we were a heavy weapons company. We were actually supposed to go to Iraq up until both our graph trainings were for Iraq, and then we went to Hohenfels with, no, you're going to Afghanistan. You got switched. So they did that for about a month and a half. And then there was one rotation, for whatever reason, the tow truck didn't come up with us. We brought a 50 cal instead, an additional 50 cal truck with us, truck. And they knew that was their moment of opportunity. And they had it close enough dialed in. The last rocket that they launched, I want to say it was like 2.5 weeks prior, and it missed the fire base by about 50 meters. It landed between the fire base and the ASG position that we had. It's just slightly, it was kind of like this very, it was uphill, but it wasn't very steep. And then we had like a little ASG position right there because it dipped off on both sides and kind of came to a point where they were at. So they had good vantage point. So it was like a weird, like OP kind of deal, but you're talking 50 meters, 100 meters, maybe from in between those two. And it was at night that they launched it. They would do it all different random times. And that was their tactic. They slowly walked this in, and they didn't engage us directly. It was all 107s. All 107s for like the first month. There was one firefight, but there was no 107 shot during that firefight. And I think they were just testing to see how we would respond. And then the second one that our platoon got in was big. And they landed, I think they shot 24, 26 107s that day. More than half of them landed within the fire base. And when I say fire base, I'm talking like maybe an acre's worth of land.
Right. Pretty small.
It was tiny. We had one hooch. We pulled guard out of our trucks. We slept on the ground, and that was it. And we had a 120 millimeter mortar pit. And unfortunately, one of the first rockets that landed, giant piece of it landed right next to our platoon leader. Giant piece of shrapnel entered his side and out his shoulder. Killed instantly. And that was a big blow, because that That was our leader, right? Great guy. Still talk to his parents occasionally. Uh, his dad's military, his younger brother's military. I mean, it was just family was all military.
Right.
Wasn't going to take the normal career path. He was talking about after getting his captain and doing his minimum time. He was talking about like doing some time over in like I think like New Zealand had a deal where you could go and like transfer over to them and do some work there in their military and stuff like that. He wasn't going to take the normal path, but it was just there was one patrol we went on where the 240 gunner again just decided it was still early on in the deployment. People are still getting used to that terrain. He basically fell out and the platoon leader just grabbed the 240 and he was like, I got it. Let's go. Like, we need to get this 240 up to this position as fast as possible. Give it to me. I'm going to get it up there and then we'll put somebody else behind it. So that's kind of the leader he was just like, if I got to carry the rope, throw it in my bag. Let's go. But that day they shot almost everything at us. We launched a javelin missile, which was the best we had at the time because we didn't have the tow truck. It was the only thing that could reach that far. A piece of shrapnel took out the bipod for the 120. The mortar section sergeant that was up there, Sergeant Major Up, retired Sergeant Major Up, just recently retired. I mean, he was literally holding the 120 by like the bipod with both hands and having the guys hang the rounds onto it, keeping it like stable so we could launch rounds still. That I think he got a silver star for it. Bronze star, maybe bronze at least with view device. The javelin missile didn't work out so well. It wasn't very well taken care of. It malfunctioned. It came out the tube and just decided to land into a cornfield or whatever field. I think it was a cornfield. It landed in a field lower in the valley. And Mark 19s, you could get one can of ammo out of them and then they jam every single time. Like it would launch 40 rounds and that was it. It would jam after the next belt you'd feed in, it would jam. You could never get more than one round. So I was on the 50 truck at the time, and my sector was watching what we called the knuckles, which was the ridge line. Looked like, somebody's knuckles on their fist. And I was watching that, and they're like, hey, you need to traverse your turret over here to cover Gebfert with the javelin. So I'm like, okay, traversing over. But it was one of those electrical ones, and it was shorting at the time. So it was into the right. So I'd crank it to the left, and then I'd let go, and then it would automatically rotate to the right. And it was just a big mess. I mean, equipment was shit.
Now, when you go on this deployment, did you take over somebody else's equipment, or did y'all ship in your own?
We shipped in a bunch, but like that saw was theaters.
Okay. So some of this equipment was well used.
Oh yeah,
and not very well loved.
Yeah, I had 7 deltas for nods. This is 2007. Yeah, 2007. So I had 7 deltas, and they made a high-pitched whine when they were on, and that's what I listened to every night for 15 months because they didn't have another pair for me. Like that was it. It was just all night long. It was brutal. I probably have probably some of the tinnitus I have probably comes from that alone. It's like Chinese water torture every night. It was brutal. I mean, we'd go on patrols, and if the loom was good enough, like I would just turn them off because I could see just as well with the loom from the 7 deltas. I mean, they're absolutely horrendous compared to some of the nods that are available now. I mean,
we're typically, anytime we go to war, and it's not just us, but we go to war, we're always fighting with the previous war's tactics and the previous war's equipment, right? And there was as we talked about, the tactics evolve, so did the equipment, right? And by the end of the GWAT era, the equipment was actually getting really good.
Oh yeah, I mean, eventually when I made it to regiment, and going up, I was in the S6 shop. Obviously, I transitioned from infantry to IT, and I worked at RHQ my entire time there, in the RS6 shop. But looking at some of the equipment that the RS8 shop had upstairs that they were doing all their R&D stuff with, man, that stuff was awesome.
Right.
And, looking back, from being on that first deployment with those whiny 7 Deltas and what was it? M68 was the red dot. Forgot the name of the actual optic. But I know the nomenclature for some reason. But
So you get
yeah.
into this, this one pretty bad, right? You lose platoon leader. What was the next big fight after that? And I mean, was it more going out after people, or was it more just sit back and wait for them to come to you?
We actually eventually we tried to relocate that base at one point, like shortly after that. The next firefight after that, crazy enough, we air assaulted in a tow missile, a 50 cal, and a Mark 19 on top of a mountain, trying to look for like a place to. We were doing some Overwatch too, but yeah, they decided to open fire in the direction of the Mark 19, and that was a big mistake on that guy's part.
Sure.
Yeah, he met an entire can of Mark 19, but luckily, you get your first 40, and then after that, it's done. So
Right.
luckily, they didn't know that it couldn't shoot any more than those 40. Otherwise, I think they probably would have re-engaged. But yeah, that scared. They were probably thinking like a 240 was going to open up on them or something like that.
Right.
Not a Mark 19. We got pretty proactive. And again, I think it was because of our leadership. So much so that it got to the point where every single time we went out to Chow K to the fire base, we would leave at night and go on a patrol, and then we would come back during the day, and they stopped shooting at us. After like a couple of weeks of that, they stopped shooting at us, like completely. As long as we kept doing that, the firefights were minimal. I mean, because they were so afraid. And then they got a little ballsy one day where it was Thanksgiving. They where we set up for the night, they attacked us from that position that afternoon. So they waited until we walked back and then set up right where we were. So there's a potential how we stayed a little bit longer and not just, we were starting to get in the habit of like, as soon as day broke, we'd get up and leave. And so that we took that as kind of them being like, okay, you have a pattern. We've picked up on it and we're going to attack you from where you were. And they, again, walked in mortar rounds. Mortar 2 was right there. That was a interesting time. A couple of guys were like just standing outside drinking their A&W root beer, just watching the rounds come in because they were way off at first. And they're like, oh man, these guys suck. This is terrible. Look at this. This is absolutely just, you guys suck. They're yelling at them and stuff like that. And then one round landed about 20 meters outside the wire. That changed everything pretty quick. Oh shit. They're scrambling to get all their gear on, and people are starting to open up fire at that point because they opened up fire on us at that point.
Sure.
With other things.
So you finish this deployment and you go back to Vicenza. Did you deploy again from Vicenza back, or what was what happened after that?
A buddy of mine and I, during that deployment, we were like, man, the Army's going to get what it wants out of us. And we were looking at our squad leaders, who some of them got stop lost, and they were trying to get contractor jobs, and they were getting turned down. They were getting hung up on because they hadn't even gone to Ranger school. They were never a part of SOF or a part of regiment or SF or anything, like one, SWIC or nothing. Like they didn't make anywhere in the SOF communities, and they were just getting turned down. No one would answer the phone for them. And if they did, they hung up. So we were like, okay, now what's the plan? Right. What do I do after this? So we got a bright idea. We're like, let's do intel because of the security clearance. We're like, yeah, get a really good security clearance. That'll be a good idea. And then it was like, yeah, but then you're still like stuck working for like NSA or something. Like you're pigeonholed into one career path. What's something that we can branch out and do a bunch of different stuff with? And we figured out IT. Come to find out, well, that my buddy that I was doing that with ended up getting shot and med boarded. The story of that, him getting shot, was a negligent discharge from a faulty pistol. So again, overseas equipment, come to find out the sear on the Beretta had worn down enough where occasionally, and we knew this and we had been saying this, Like occasionally, sometimes when you'd cock it, the decocking lever would go and the firing pin would hammer forward.
Yeah.
And so
I've never liked the Beretta. I've never.
one day
Ever.
he went, loaded it, and sure enough, decocking lever, firing pin, and round went right into his elbow. And so he didn't get to re-enlist for that job. I did, fortunately. And so I switched over to 25 Bravo. So your IT specialist or your computer nerd is what most people would refer to it as, which I think was looking back, probably one of the smartest things I could have done. I wouldn't have done it any other way. I'm very glad that I went in as infantry and got some trigger time and got a deployment as infantry under my belt and was that deployment of all deployments to go on. Because at the end of the day, I would hate to have the regret of like I could have done more. And that's actually how I ended up at regiment and going to Ranger School, was fear of regret, fear of not knowing whether or not I could have made it through Ranger School.
So you re-enlisted and were allowed to change your MOS as part of your re-enlistment, right?
Yep.
So you choose 25 Bravo. You go to Fort Gordon, I'm assuming, for AIT.
Yep.
How long is that AIT?
Just under 5 months.
Just under 5 months. Okay. So you come out of Gordon. Where was your first assignment after that?
Fort Carson.
Fort Carson, Colorado.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they were moving 4th ID from Fort Hood to Fort Carson. So I was part of that move. And that was I was ready to get out of there day one.
So how did you get from Carson into regiment? What was that path?
I wanted out of 4th ID. It was a terrible unit. Not 4th ID as a whole, but just specifically that brigade. That I think it was 1st Brigade Combat Team. It was really bad. It was not good. So I was looking for ways out. I put in a package to go to an SMU, got turned down, and was literally looking anywhere at that point in time. Former roommate of mine from Italy ended up getting killed. And for whatever reason, my mind was, okay, I am physically capable to do a whole lot more than sit behind this desk and create computer accounts for people. And, I got trigger time and stuff like that. And I'm more than physically capable of handling a ton. I don't want to be 40 years old where I'm at now in life, looking back going, could I have passed Ranger School? If I'm going to take this career path of doing IT, I can do more. And I don't want to regret later on not doing more and not seeing if I was capable of doing more. So my former battalion commander at the time, Colonel Oslin, was the deputy commander at regiment. Sent him an email. Hey, sir, I'm Sergeant Nelson. I was with you in Italy. 25 Bravo. I got an email from your recruiting office stating that you guys need 25 Bravos. What do I got to do to get there? And he's like, I got you. Send me your ERB. Send him my ERB. I had, 3 different people reach out. And I was like in the field at that point in time at Fort Carson too, sending them this email. And within hours, I had 3 different people calling me, emailing me, asking me for information, filling out like all the paperwork and everything. Hey, we're going to get you a RASP date. You're like, this is what you're going to have to go do. And then you're going to have to go to RASP. Then you're going to go to CERT. Then you're going to go to Ranger School before you even show up to your unit. This is how it's going to be. And I was like, all right, let's do it. Like, let's go. Not really knowing what RASP was because it was so new at that point in time, like how bad it was going to be. Yeah, I mean, that's how that ended up. I put in my paperwork and then they go, oh, you only have a year left. You have to re-enlist to go to RASP. Oh yeah, by the way, the pass rate.
There's that carrot.
Re-enlist, we'll send you to RASP. Little did I realize that the pass rate of RASP in like the first class that went through that had just gone through was like 10-15% passed. I didn't know that. No one was telling me that. And so I was like, oh, it's like RIP. Like, at that point, it's like what, like 40, 50% or 60%, whatever the attrition rate was of guys passing. I think it was like, I would say it's probably somewhere similar to Ranger School. I think RIP was. So I was like, okay, like it's going to be tough, but I'll make it. I'm tough enough, like mentally, I'll make it. And so I started training a little bit for it. And yeah, I had to re-enlist just to go to RASP. If I didn't make it, if I quit, I was going right back 4th ID for 3 more years. Not 1 more year, 3 more years. You want to talk about like the ultimate, like you want to quit, like just remember where you're going to go to if you don't make this.
Yeah.
So in my mind, like there was never through RASP, there was never a moment I was like, I'm going to quit this. Like I was like, I'm not going back to that. I'm not. I'm going to end up here. So much so that like I didn't go into it in the shape that I should have been. I'll put it that way. I got my ass handed to me a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, bad.
But you passed.
Yeah, I got selected. I mean, there was one run I was falling out of. I'll put it that way. I was falling out of that run. And I was a good bit behind everybody. And there was a cadre with me. And it was just him and I, no one else around. So perfect moment for him to like get in my head, right? He's running next to me and he goes, just quit, man. We're not going to select you anyways. You're wasting the Army's time. You're wasting regiment's time. We're not going to select you. Just save everybody the time. Save yourself the embarrassment. Just fucking quit. You ain't going to make it. You didn't come here ready for this. Just fucking quit. And just kept on going. Just kept on going. And I didn't say a word. Just, all right. If you're going to drop me, you're going to drop me. This isn't going to be the way you do it. And I just knew, I was like, if you really wanted me out of here, you would cut me. You would just, that would be it. You would just tell me, hey, stop running. We're not going to select, like, we're not going to select you. You're unselected. Like, you're no longer in RASP. You're done.
Right.
And he wouldn't say it. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I just need to make it back to the formation. Formation circles back around, picks me up. I just got to keep pushing. I can't quit. And eventually, yeah, I was fortunate enough that they selected me. You know, it was very different. I thought I was going to go to cert right away. And like, you know, in my head, that's what was going to happen. I showed up and they're like, no, actually there's an E7 billet as an E5. There's an E7 billet. We need you to go fill at RHQ more than we need to send you to Ranger School right now. So we're going to send you into that billet. Oh yeah, by the way, here's the fire hose, breathe. Yeah, we'll figure out a date for you later to go to Ranger School.
Okay. So you're down a regiment down. This is Savannah, Georgia, right?
Benning. Yeah, I was at Benning.
Oh, you're Benning.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
you're Benning.
right at the flagpole, man. Put me right at RHQ. Okay. I mean, you're gonna be downstairs from the commander, and yeah.
Okay. So what was that like?
Not the normal regiment story or experience that most people have. Unfortunately, you know, I didn't do any line time. You know, so I didn't get when you work at RHQ, you're with a lot of higher, you know, E6 and aboves and stuff like that are all working in S3 or, you know, really high, you know, higher ranking guys that are literally there for a break to get them away from the line, or they're waiting for their next promotion to become a first sergeant or a sergeant major or whatever their next move in life or in their career was in regiment. You know, they'd kind of set them there for a little bit. They'd run whatever that they're running, and then they would go on to doing the next thing on the line. So there wasn't a lot of like lower enlisted development or lower NCO development whatsoever. Which it's just part of the beast being there. Because you have so many guys that are really only there for a year or two, and then they're back off to the line. But I sat in a basement with a bunch of contractors that made a ton of money, that were doing some really cool IT stuff, right? Some very like nerdy computer stuff. And, you know, at the time I knew a little bit to be dangerous, but I didn't know a ton. And so I took that as an opportunity, because my whole idea in switching jobs was to have a job post Army. And I looked at that as like the perfect opportunity to learn some invaluable skills so I can market myself when I left the Army. And that's exactly what I did. Sean, a previous guest of yours, I sat right next to him. There he is. Sat next to him for a good bit, and, you know, would just pick his brain and try and learn from him, from Matt Hogue, and from Nick, and just absorbed as much as I could. So shout out to Sean. They kind of taught me the contractor game, how to play it, how to do it, and then taught me a ton of stuff, some technical stuff that allowed me to have a really good contracting career post my time in the Army, and allowed me to get hired some pretty unique and pretty incredible jobs from there. So shout out to them. But that was my experience. I did Much love, Sean. Was fortunate enough. I kind of proved myself. Eventually, they gave me a slot for Ranger School. Got the probably the best pep talk you could ever get from somebody. And Sergeant Major Ferguson called me into his office. And he's like, "You leaving tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yeah, Roger that, Sergeant Major." And he's like, "All right, come back with your tab or your bag's packed. Because if you don't pass, I'm kicking you out of regiment, and I'm going to send you over to Kelly Hill for the rest of your time in the Army."
Which is almost a death sentence, right?
Yeah. Yeah. At that point, every terrible stereotype that you've ever heard about an Army unit exists on Kelly Hill. Like the worst of the worst. I can't say that for sure. I never really spent any time there, but that's essentially what you get from everyone is like the worst of the worst exists there. Now,
Having spent some time in other units, I'm sure they leak out because
Yeah.
I've served with some of them.
yeah. And it's so, I mean, and he said that, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, all right,
Cool.
get out of here. And I was like, that's it. That's my peps. Okay. I'm
Cool.
not quitting. All right. I'm coming
Yeah.
back with it. And was fortunate enough to go straight through Ranger School. Was very fortunate. My my platoon sergeant from Italy was one of the first sergeants in Florida. So there's I saw some familiar faces when I got to Florida, which was nice.
Nice.
They didn't completely hook me up. I still had to earn it. I still really actually had to earn it, which was really nice. Is my last patrol in Florida, that RI had no idea who I was. Had no idea that I was connected with those guys whatsoever. He only found out afterwards because they made me the first sergeant for our company for graduation. And so on the bus on the way back from Florida to Benning, we were just kind of, because I had to sit up front, and he's just asking me some questions. He's like, so what units were you in? Blah, blah. And I told him, and I was like, you didn't know that First Sergeant Rob was my platoon sergeant? He's like, I had no idea. I was like, all right, cool, sweet. I guess I actually earned it. So it made me feel good because when you get there and you see some familiar faces, they pull you off to the side, and they kind of give you the lowdown of like, don't get peered. Don't do something stupid. We're going to take care of the rest for you. And that was the speech I got from them. It was like, oh. So like I knew my first RI on my first patrol in Florida. I knew him very well.
Well, I mean, it's a small world as it is, but the military makes it smaller, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Extremely.
you stay in long enough, and you're going to run into people, at your different stations that you've served with. So
yeah, even as a contractor overseas, I ran into guys that I was in the Army with, and I'm like, dude, what's up? What are you doing here? And it was. I mean, granted, I was in Kuwait. I was in Kuwait, so it's a very transient place.
Sure.
You see a ton of people walk through there, but still like see guys that like I was on that first deployment with walking through, like, dude, what's up? So
you pass Ranger School, you go back to Benning. How long until you're out at that point?
A little over a year. I did one more deployment, my last one with regiment. They wanted a 25 series tab 25 series to be the commander's aide in RTO, which was actually pretty cool.
Where was that deployment?
2012.
Where? What?
Afghanistan.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were the task force commander at the time. Regiment was the task force commander for kill capture assets in country. But then kind of hanging out with commander, you kind of see it was kind of cool. Like that was how I went out of the military, was seeing the full picture of what was going on over there, because I was seeing it from what I could see from the commander's point of view of everything he had available and all the operations that were going on at that point in time. And going from my first deployment being, the conventional force that's securing a road and living out in the sticks in the wild, wild west, to seeing all the assets that we would do cover. What do you call it? They would basically switch out with each other, or infills or exfills. They would have us do an air assault somewhere, and there would just be dudes on the helicopter with beards and long hair and very different uniforms and weapons. And then they weren't on the bird with us on the way back. And now all of that started making sense to me when you got to see it from that level of like, oh, we were just the decoy. Gotcha.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. That's cool. Like, awesome.
So that's a good segue into one of the things I always ask, and this is a little difficult for some people. Your thoughts now, with a little bit of hindsight, versus your thoughts going in to the operations and everything in Afghanistan and Iraq. I know you were in Afghanistan, but your thoughts, and I don't want to get political, but I want to make sure we capture, because I've seen a lot of people, especially with the way we withdrew from Afghanistan and the
Yeah.
way that went down. There's been a lot of people who have felt, I don't want to use the word betrayed, but that's probably a good word for it, right? They
Yeah.
almost feel like they had the rug pulled out from underneath them, and some of them are you know still kind of dealing with that. And so I wanted to
Yeah.
capture,
It's tough.
what are your thoughts on that?
We could have done that same pullout in 2007 during my first deployment, or
Yeah.
the day we killed Bin Laden. We could have done the same thing, and we would have gotten the same effect. I mean, we could have pulled out super early, a long, saved how many Americans, not just in combat, death in combat or KIA, but like how many lives have been impacted negatively because of PTSD or mental health or this, that, and the other because of it, right? Or the guys that, like you mentioned, that are still having a hard time with that pullout. I mean, that alone, how many lives are that? What is that butterfly effect of that? How's that trickle down through generations of people? I think we could have done that a long time ago. But I mean, I wouldn't say I struggled with it, but I definitely was confused. I was a little pissed off.
Sure.
But then I realized that, and the biggest thing that powers me today is the guys that did sacrifice, and girls, but those that sacrificed their lives over there and cashed that blank check, they didn't do that for us to come back here and get pissed off or take our own lives or find our way in the bottom of a bottle on a regular basis. That's not why they made that sacrifice. They made that sacrifice so that we could come back and live a life worth their sacrifice. And so when I started reframing it like that in my brain and realizing that everything I do for the rest of my life, the phrase never forgotten. Well, if I live the best life that I can possibly live and I can create a legacy with myself and the life that I live and what I build within my life, those names of those people, like my platoon leader, Lieutenant Hall, my roommate that was killed, Sergeant Beechnaw, like their names continue through that. And so, yeah, that was big for me. I mean, that changed everything for me in seeing it that way, because you can get pissed off about how it happened or when it happened, but you had no control over that. What you do have control over is the life that you choose to live and the impact that you leave on people's lives and carrying on and living a life that's worth that sacrifice that they had, whether it could have been prevented or avoided. That wasn't on you. There's nothing you could have done about that, but you can allow other people to remember them and remember their sacrifice and like I said, live a life that was worth their sacrifice. Live a life and create something that was worth that, their tomorrows being sacrificed.
100%. 100%. All right, we've been going about an hour. Is there any additional stories, anything you want, something you saw, maybe a heroic act by somebody, maybe, you gave a child an MRE and it was the best day of their life or something, anything like that you want future generations to know?
Yeah. We're not that different from anybody else on the planet. They're all humans. We have our differences. We have different cultures. We have different beliefs, different systems. Now, there's some things that I don't agree with. There's some things that parts of certain cultures that bother me to the bone. But at the end of the day, they were still humans, kids asking for pens, and doing stuff like that. Like you mentioned, handing them some food or something like that, and watching the impact that had on them, or kind of the overall impact we had. I'm not like the biggest proponent of, certain political ideologies and stuff like that, but the fact that women were able to go to school there, people in general were given opportunities to better their life, I think, because of what we were doing there. I think that gets lost a lot of times.
Right.
And so really it's I do a lot with data on a daily basis, and you can tell any story you want with data.
Sure.
You can twist it however you want to say whatever you want. But, from my standpoint, I really think there was a potential for us to do some good there. I can't say it was all good. I know it was very difficult a lot of times, and it's a culture that was very different from ours. But once you figure out kind of how they speak and how that culture works, and I think some of the leadership that we had during that first deployment and my time in regiment, they understood that, and they were able to utilize that to the advantage. And I think there was a lot of things that way above their heads that kind of hindered their abilities to do that at times. And but I think, man, there are some. When I was in college, I had to write a paper about what a hero is. And to me, the definition of what a hero is, it's not, a superhero like Batman, or I guess Batman's maybe a good version of it, but it's not like Superman or somebody who's born with this innate ability. It's just a regular person that decides to do something. So really what I'd like younger generations to realize is that the country that you live in and the society that we have, whether you like it or you dislike it or however you feel about it, but the fact that you have the opportunities you do have is because people raised their right hand and volunteered to go to. When all this was going on, like myself, I volunteered to join the Army when Iraq and Afghanistan were in full swing, and people like that did that on a daily basis, and then went to these places and not knowing what it was going to be like, not knowing what Afghanistan was going to be like fully. I mean, you have an idea, but you don't really know until you get there, or how Iraq is. People were willing to do that, and they were willing to sign a blank check that could cost them everything, just to try and whatever their reasons were. But I mean, at the end of the day, you really end up there because of the people that are standing next to you and the guys you're in those firefights with more than anything else. You're fighting for them. And I mean, that was probably, talk about heroism on a daily basis. I mean, seeing dudes just do things on a regular basis. I mean, just wild stuff. Like if I explained it to you, most people would just be like, yeah, it's bullshit. Cause it was just, I mean, dudes running through carrying ammo and a round misses them by millimeters. I mean, there was one instance where a guy, he had the hole in his pants from the round that was like probably burnt the hairs on his balls because it was so close.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? And you see that sort of stuff, or you hear stories about guys getting shot and then keep fighting. I mean, Ranch House, I don't know, most people don't know about it, but Ranch House was a pretty big attack that we had to deal with. Everybody there was injured. Not a single guy got killed. I'm talking like 20 some guys. All of them got shot, shrapnel, some way, shape, or form. Not a single one of them got killed. I mean, I wasn't there for that. I didn't see it, but I know those guys.
Right.
Every single one of the guys that I was with, every single guy that was in the Corngall that was there for one not. I mean, you want to talk about heroism, you just have to look at those, and the fact that more people weren't more severely injured or killed is, I mean, it's all there. It's all there because it felt like it was just normal to see guys do things that were, very heroic or unworldly kind of type stuff.
All right. So where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn if you look up Tyler Nelson. I do own an AI automations agency. We build AI systems and solutions for businesses to help you scale, spend less money, spend less time, and make more money. And And the company's name is Allset. It's ALSET. So spell Tesla backwards, Technologies. If you look us up, you'll find us. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. That's where you're going to find me the most. Occasionally hop on Facebook or Instagram, but you're not going to see much there. LinkedIn is where you can get at me. Very, very active there. And yeah, just I love connecting with other veterans that are doing anything in business or in their transition. I'm starting to do a lot with the strategic veteran and helping Adam Peters and helping them with that process. He's doing a lot for veterans that are transitioning out and helping them kind of what that feels like, what it looks like. So getting involved there as well.
Great. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Hang on for a bit. Thank you to our sponsors, Marvita, your go-to for sport fishing in Cabo San Lucas, Gear for Grunts, Rapid Access Magazine Pods for your AR-style devices, Alpha Elite Performance, take your workouts to the next level, Enlisted 9 Fight Company, go-to apparel for veterans and first responders, and bowhammer.com. Thank you, everybody, for your evening. Thank you, Tyler, for coming on.
My pleasure, Rob. Appreciate it.